So the narrator says, so he lay down for a very long time. Sometimes he seemed to wake up, and at those times he noticed it was very late at night. But he did not think about getting up. At last, he noticed the sky was starting to get bright. He was lying on his back, still confused from his deep sleep. Scared and sad cries came loudly from the street, sounds he heard every night under his window after 2 o'clock. These sounds woke him up now. Now he's thinking, ah, the drunk men are coming out of the bars, he thought. It's past 2 o'clock. And right away he jumped up, as if someone had pulled him off the sofa. What? Past 2 o'clock? He sat down on the sofa and suddenly he remembered everything. In one flash, in one flash, he remembered everything. For a moment, he thought he was going crazy. A terrible cold feeling came over him. But this cold was from the fever that had already started while he slept. Now he suddenly began shaking hard, so much that his teeth were knocking together and his whole body was shaking. He opened the door and listened. Everyone in the house was asleep. He looked at himself and at the room around him in shock, wondering how could have come home last night without locking the door and thrown himself on the sofa without taking off his clothes, without even taking off his hat. His hat has fallen off and was lying on the floor near his pillow. He's thinking, if someone had come in, what would they have thought? That I'm drunk? But the narrator says he rushed to the window. There was enough light now, and he began quickly checking himself from the head to foot, checking all his clothes. Were there any marks? But he couldn't check properly like that. So, shivering with cold, he took off everything and checked again. He checked every thread and every piece of cloth. And because he didn't trust himself, he checked 3 times. But there seemed to be nothing, no marks at all, except in one spot, where there was some thick drops of dried blood were stuck to the torn edge of his pants. He picked up a big folding knife and cut off the torn threads. Now there seemed to be nothing left. I have to wait 20 seconds here. Big bad vampire out here. Anybody here? Suddenly he remembered the coin purse and the things he had taken from the old woman's box were still in his pockets. He hadn't even thought about taking them out and hiding them. He hadn't thought about them all at all while checking his clothes. But now he quickly pulled them all out and threw them on the table. When he had emptied everything and turned his pocket inside out to make sure nothing was left, he carried the whole pile to the corner of the room. The wallpaper had come loose at the bottom of the wall and hung there in torn pieces. He began pushing all the things into the hole behind the paper. He's thinking, they're in, all hidden, and the purse too. Now the narrator says he thought happily, standing up and staring blankly at the hole, which now stuck out more than before. Suddenly he shook all over with fear. His thoughts, my God, he whispered, full of sadness. What's wrong with me? Is it really hidden? Is it how you hide things? The narrator says he hadn't planned on having jewelry and small objects to hide. He had only thought about money, so he hadn't prepared a proper hiding place. His thoughts. But right now, what am I happy about? He thought. Is that hiding things? My mind is leaving me. It really is. Narrator. He sat down on the sofa, worn out, and right away another wave of shivering shook him. Without thinking, he pulled his old winter coat from his student days off a nearby chair. It was almost falling apart but still warm. Covered himself with it, and fell back into a half sleep full of confused dreams. He lost awareness completely. Not even 5 minutes had passed when he jumped up again and again attacked his clothes in a panic. His thoughts: how could I fall asleep again with nothing done? Yes, yes, I never took the loop of the armhole. I forgot something like that. Such important proof against me. Narrator. He pulled off the loop of string, quickly cut into small pieces, and threw the pieces in among his bed sheets under the pillow. His thoughts. Torn pieces of cloth couldn't make anyone suspicious. No matter what happens, I don't think so. I don't really think so. I really don't think so. Narrator. He said again and again, standing in the middle of the room. With painful focus, he began looking around the room again, at the floor, everywhere, trying to make sure he hadn't forgotten anything. The fear that all his abilities, even his memory, even simple clear thinking were failing him began to feel unbearable. His thoughts. Is it really starting already? Is my punishment really coming for me? It is. The narrator. The torn pieces he had cut from his pants were still lying right there in the middle of the floor, where anyone walking in would see them right away. His thoughts. What is wrong with me? He cried out again, like someone who had lost his mind. The narrator. Then a strange thought came into his head that maybe all his clothes were covered in blood, that maybe there were many stains, but he couldn't see them, couldn't notice them because his mind was breaking down, going to pieces. His thinking was foggy. Suddenly he remembered that there had been blood on the coin purse too. Now he's thinking, ah, then there must be blood on my pocket too, because I put the wet purse in my pocket. The narrator says, in a flash, he turned the pocket inside out, and yes, there were marks, stains on the inside of the pocket. Now he's thinking, so my mind hasn't completely left me. I still have some sense and memory. Since I figured this out myself, the narrator says that he thought proudly, taking a deep breath of relief. Now he is thinking, it's just a weakness from the fever, a moment of confusion. Now the narrator says, and he tore the whole lining out of the left pocket of his pants. And at that moment, sunlight hit his left foot. He thought he saw marks. He threw off his boots. Oh, very good wine out there. Want to take a shot? Let's leave that. His thoughts. Marks indeed. The tip of the sock is soaked with blood. He must have accidentally stepped in that pool of blood, the narrator says. Now he's thinking, but what do I do with this now? Where do I put the sock and the rags and the pocket? The narrator says he gathered them all in his hands and stood in the middle of the room. He starts. In the stove? Nah, they would search the stove first thing. Burn them? But what would I even burn them with? I don't even have matches. No, better to go out and throw it all away somewhere. Yes, better to throw it away. The narrator says, he repeated, sitting back down on the sofa. Now, Raskolnikov is thinking, and right now, this minute, without waiting. The narrator is saying, but instead, his head dropped on the pillow. Again, the freezing shivering came over him. Again, he pulled the coat over himself, and for a long while, for several hours, he kept feeling the urge to go out somewhere right now, this second, and throw it away. So it's gone and out of sight. Right now. Right now. Several times he tried to get up from the sofa, but couldn't. He was finally fully woken up by loud knocking on his door. A girl named Nastasia says, open up. Are you dead or alive? He just keeps sleeping in there for days at a time. He's snoring here like a dog. A dog, that's what he is. What he is. Open up. I'm telling you, it's already past 10. The man's voice, the porter. Maybe he's not at home. Narrator. Ah, that's the porter's voice. What does he want? He jumped up and sat on the sofa. His heart was pounding so hard, it actually hurt his thumbs. Then who would have locked the door from inside? Nastasia. He started bolting himself in, as if he had anything worth stealing. Open up, you fool! Wake up! His thoughts. What do they want? Why the porter? They know everything. Should I fight or open the door? Whatever happens, happens. Narrator says he sat up halfway, leaned forward, and unlocked the door. His room was so small that he could reach the lock without leaving the bed. Yes, the porter and Nastasia were standing there. Nastasia stared at him strangely. He looked at the porter with a mix of defiance and hopelessness. The porter, without saying a word, the porter, without saying a word, held out a gray folded paper with a wax seal. Now the porter says, a notice from the office. He said, handing him the paper. Raskolnikov says, from what office? The porter says, a police summons, of course. You know which office? Raskolnikov. The police? What for? What for? Porter. How should I know? You've been called, so you go. Narrator. The porter looked at him closely, glanced around the room, and turned to leave. Nastasia says, he's really sick. The narrator says, she said, not taking her eyes off him. The porter turned his head for a second. Nastasia says, he's had a fever since yesterday. She added. Raskolnikov didn't answer and just held the paper without opening it. Nastasia says, don't get up then. You're sick. So don't go. There's no rush like that. What's that you are holding? Narrator says, he looked down in his right hand. He was holding the torn pieces he had cut out from his pants, the sock, and the pieces of pocket. So he had fallen asleep holding them. Thinking back on it later, he remembered that while half waking during his fever, he had grabbed all this tightly in his hand and fallen back asleep holding it. Nastasia says, "Look at the rags he's collected, sleeping with them like he's found some kind of treasure." And Nastasia burst into a nervous laugh. Right away, he shoved everything under his coat and stared hard at her. Even though he could barely think clearly at the moment, he felt that no one would act so casually with a person who is about to be arrested. Then Raskolnikov says, "But the police?" Stresses, "You should have some tea." "Yes, I'll bring you some. There's a little left." Raskolnikov says, "No, I'm going. I'll go right now. I'll go right now." Narrate, he mumbled, getting to his feet. Nastasia says, "But you'll never make it down the stairs." "Yes, I'll go. Do as you like." She followed the porter out. Right away, he rushed to the window light to check the sock and the rags. There are stains, but not very clear ones, all covered in dirt, rub, and already faded. No one without any suspicion could notice anything. Nastasia from far away couldn't have seen it. Thank God, narrator says. Then, shaking, he broke the seal on the notice and began reading. It took him a long time before he understood. It was a normal summons from the local police station telling him to come that day at 9:30 to see the district police chief. Now he's thinking that, but when did anything like this happen? I have never had any dealings with the police. And why today of all days? मतलब वो सोच रहा है कि ये आज ही होना था क्या? He thought in painful confusion. Good God, just let it be over quickly. He was about to fall on his knees and pray, but instead burst out laughing, not really at the idea of praying, but at himself. He began dressing quickly. If I'm caught, I'm caught. I don't care. Should I put this tag on? He suddenly wondered. It will get dustier and the marks will disappear. But as soon as he put it on, he pulled it off again in disgust and fear. He pulled it off, but then, realizing he had no other socks, he picked it up and put it on again and laughed again. That's all just made up rules. All just a matter of opinion, just a way of seeing things, he thought. He thought quickly, but only on the surface of his mind, while his whole body shook. He thought, "There, I've got it on. I finally put it on." But his laughter was quickly followed by deep hopelessness. "No, this is too much for me," he thought. His legs were shaking from fear. He mumbled. His head was spinning and aching from the fever. He thought, "It's a trap. They want to lure me there and trap me over everything." He thought as he walked out onto the stairs. The worst part is, I'm almost out of my mind. I might say something stupid without meaning to. On the stairs, he remembered he had left everything just as it was, in the hole in the wall, and they will probably search the place on purpose while I'm out, he thought, and stopped in his tracks. But he was so full of hopelessness, such a strange, calm sadness that he waved his hand and kept walking. Just let it be over, he thought. Outside, the heat was unbearable again. Not a single drop of rain had fallen in days. Again, there was dust, bricks, plaster, again the bad smell from the shops and bars. Again, the drunk men, the street sellers, and the beat up horse carriages. The sun shone straight right into his eyes that it hurt to look, and his head felt like it was spinning. The way a person with a fever feels stepping out into a bright sunny street. Yes. When he reached the corner of the street he needed, he looked down it with fear toward the house and quickly looked away. If they question me, maybe I'll just tell them everything, he thought, as he got close to the police station. The police station was about a quarter mile away. It had recently moved to the new rooms on the fourth floor of the building. He had been to the old office once, briefly, a long time ago. Turning into the entrance, he saw stairs on the right, with a farm worker climbing them holding a notebook. A house porter probably, so the office must have been there. And he started climbing the stairs, guessing his way. He didn't want to ask anyone for directions. I'll go and get down on my knees and admit everything, he thought, as he reached the fourth floor. The stair was steep. The staircase was steep, narrow, and wet with dirty water everywhere. The kitchens of the apartments opened right onto the stairs and stayed open almost all day. So there was a terrible smell and heat. The stairs were packed with porters going up and down, carrying notebooks, police officers, and all kind of people, men and women. The office door was also wide open. Farm workers stood waiting inside. In there too, the heat was choking, and there was a sickening smell of fresh paint and old oil from the newly painted rooms. After waiting a bit, he decided to move to the next room. All the rooms were small and had low ceilings. A terrible restlessness pushed him forward again and again. No one paid him any attention. In the second room, some clerks sat writing, dressed barely than he was, and looking like a rather odd group. He walked up to one of them. The clerk says, "What do you want?" Narrator says, he showed the notice he had received. The clerk said, "You're a student?" The man asked, glancing at the notice. "Yes, I used to be a student." The clerk looked at him without any real interest. He was a messy looking man with a strange, fixed stare, like someone stuck on one idea. There'd be no point getting anything out of this man because he has no interest in anything, he thought. "Go in there to head clerk," the clerk directed him, pointing to the far room. He walked into that room, the fourth one in a row. It was a small and packed full of people. "Wait here 20 seconds again." Look right there, 20 feet away or more. Among them, there were two women, one dressed plainly in the black mourning clothes, sat at the table across from the head clerk, writing down what he was telling her to write. The other, a very large, full figured woman with a purple, red, blotchy face, dressed showily, wearing a brooch on her chest as big as a small plate, stood off to one side, clearly waiting for something. Raskolnikov handed his notice to the head clerk. The clerk glanced the clerk glanced at it and said, "Wait a minute." Then went back to helping the woman in mourning. He breathed. easier. It can't be that, he thought. Bit by bit, he began to feel calmer, telling himself to stay brave and steady. Some small mistake, some careless slip, and I might give myself away. It's a shame there's no fresh air here, he added. It's stuffy, it makes my head spin even more, and my thoughts too. He felt a terrible storm going on inside him. He was afraid of losing control of himself. He tried to grab onto something, to focus his mind on something completely unrelated, but he couldn't manage it at all. Still, the head clerk interested him a great deal. He kept hoping to look right through him and guess something from his face. He was a very young man, about 22, with a dark, lively face that looked